Well, are you ready? We're going to talk about the facts of life this morning. Here we go. It's the birds and the bees. And no, we're not going to do those facts of life. We're going to talk about one fact of life this morning. And Pema Chodron talks about there are three facts of life, and we'll talk about them in a minute. Three facts of this human experience. But today we're going to talk about impermanence. So Wikipedia defines impermanence as also being known as a philosophical problem of change. It's a philosophical concept addressed in a variety of religions and philosophies. In Eastern philosophy, it is notable for its role in the Buddhist three marks of existence. It is also an element of Hinduism. But in Western philosophy, it is most famously known through its first appearance in Greek philosophy in the writings of Heraclitus and in his doctrine of panta rhei, or everything flows. Everything flows. In Western philosophy, the concept is also referred to as becoming. And what a timely topic this is in our ever-changing world that we are sharing our human experience with, this ever-changing world that we share this human experience with. We seem to be constantly made aware of the ever-changing impermanence of the experience we're having. Pema Chodron writes this about impermanence in her book, Comfortable with Uncertainty. And the chaplains and I are reading this book at each chaplain meeting. We'll be meeting today at 1 o'clock. And we were very quiet after we read this reading on impermanence. And some of the highlights from the book are, according to the Buddha, the lives of all beings are marked by three characteristics: impermanence, egolessness, and suffering or dissatisfaction. Recognizing these qualities to be real and true in our own experience helps us to relax with things as they are. The first mark, the first way of being, the first characteristic is impermanence, that nothing is static or fixed, that all is fleeting and changing, is the first mark of existence. And we don't have to be mystics or physicists to know this. Yet, at the level of personal experience, we resist this basic fact. We resist impermanence. It means that life isn't always going to go our way. It means that there's loss as well as gain. And we don't like that. We really don't. We don't like that. We know that all is impermanent. We know that everything wears out. Last week, these flowers were absolutely beautiful. And they're still beautiful this week. They're just changing. Nothing is permanent. Everything is impermanent. Everything. Although we can buy the truth, this truth intellectually, emotionally, we have a deep-rooted aversion to it. We do. We have a deep-rooted aversion to it. We want permanence. We expect permanence. Our natural tendency is to seek security, and we believe we can find it. We experience impermanence at the everyday level as frustration. We use our daily activity as a shield against the fundamental ambiguity of our situation, expending tremendous energy trying to ward off impermanence and death. We keep busy so that we can ward it off. We find activity after activity after activity, so we don't have to sit and think about the fact that there is impermanence. We don't like impermanence at any age, and we're afraid of wrinkles and sagging skin. We use health products as if we actually believe that our skin, our hair, our eyes, and our teeth might miraculously somehow escape the truth of impermanence. And I have to admit to it myself, Friday afternoon, I had an appointment at the gym with my trainer. And for the better part of the last year and a half, I've been doing my workout at home with Mac on Zoom. I've had the camera and the monitor in my office here, just like I do now, and you can see the living room behind me, and I'm in there doing my workout. And it's far enough away that I can see myself doing the exercises, but not really close enough to see me. I'm doing my exercises and there's activity going on all around. There's traffic outside, people walking up and down the street. Miss Puma and Bessie Coleman usually want to get involved, and that means more distraction. So this Friday, I decided I need to get out more, and I went to the gym for my workout. So I was alone with my trainer, and here I am in this beautiful gym, and it's a huge gym and with high ceilings, and there's lights up in the ceiling, and the place is very well lit. There's a glass storefront and the lights pouring in. And you know how gyms are. You want to be able to see the exercises. There's mirrors on every wall. So Max says, he puts down a mat on the floor after we've done some warm up, and he says, now lay flat, put your hands up over your head and your feet straight out, and then bring your legs up and your arms up at the same time so that you're working your abs and you're bringing your legs up and your arms up. And on the third lift into the air, there it was, sagging skin. No, not on my legs, not on my calves. It can't be. I don't have crepe skin. But yes, there it was. Oh my gosh, I didn't want to see it. But there it was. And I had to deal with it. And as if that wasn't bad enough, yesterday, I get onto Facebook to look and see what's going on. And there's an ad for the treatment of sagging and crepe skin on my Facebook page. Now, I want to know how Mark Zuckerberg knew that I needed treatment for sagging and crepe skin. I mean, this world today, you never know what's going to be happening, what's going to come up. Then yesterday, I fixed myself some dinner and brought it to my desk. You see, I was working on today's sermon, and when I finished dinner, I took the dishes out to the kitchen and put them in the sink. Now, it had only been 20 minutes since I had fixed my dinner and brought it in and ate it and did some work on the sermon. And when I went to put the dishes in the sink, there were hundreds and hundreds of ants in the sink. Hundreds of ants. How did they get there? How did they get there so fast? Where was the trail starting? What was going on? And all of a sudden, these ants that had made a permanent home in my sink found themselves to be quite impermanent, because I took their bottle of Raid and I squirted those ants like there was no tomorrow. There's nothing worse than an infestation of ants. And what was permanent was not permanent any longer. We see impermanence all around us, almost every moment. Matter of fact, we see it in every moment because every moment is different. Impermanence means that everything changes and nothing remains the same in any consecutive moment. And although things change every moment, they still cannot be accurately described as the same or as different from what they were a moment ago. When we bathe in a river today, that we bathed in yesterday, is it the same river? Heraclitus said that we couldn't step into the same river twice. He was right. The water in the river today is completely different than the water we bathed in yesterday. Yes, it's the same river, When Confucius was standing on the bank of a river watching it flow by, he said, "Oh, it flows like that day and night, never ending." The insight of impermanence helps us to go beyond all concepts. It helps us to go beyond same and different and coming and going. It helps us to see that the river is not the same river, but is also not different either. It shows us that the flame we lit on our bedside candle before we went to bed is not the same flame of the next morning. The flame on the table is not two flames, but then it's not one either. So here I was, 19 years old in 1969, just finished a freshman year of a freshman year of college. And it was the summer, and don't be shocked, everybody, I was dating a girl that lived in Lewistown, PA, about 150 miles from Pittsburgh. Her best friend, Marla, was staying with her for the weekend. And Marla's boyfriend, Zach, and I decided to drive up for the weekend. My parents were away, so they wouldn't have liked me just heading out, but they wouldn't know. So I took the second car. I think it was a 64 DeSoto or something with a stick shift and a bright lights button on the floor. And, it was an old car. And so we drove up to Lewistown. And we had a great weekend, woke up in the morning and had matzo brie for breakfast. It was wonderful. It was fun. It was really good. And then it was time to drive back. Well, it was 1969 and things were different on the road then. There weren't a lot of major freeways going on. And so we were coming down a 2-lane road in Pennsylvania. Lots of 2-lane roads in Pennsylvania. And if you remember those days, well, on a 2-lane road, if there was a truck in front of you, you could be stuck behind that truck for some time. There was a dotted white line going down the road, a solid white line, or a yellow line, which meant don't pass, don't cross. Well, there had been a yellow line and a dotted white line off and on, and it was changing so fast it was hard to know really when the next dotted line would be there. So I could pass this truck that I'd been following for the last 15 miles. But I'm driving along and I'm getting sick and tired of following this truck. And then I see it turned to a dotted white line, and I looked out the window and I couldn't see anything coming. And I pulled out and stepped on the gas and went to go past the truck. And all of a sudden, the line turned yellow, and I said, "A yellow line, why?" And there comes from a dip in the road up a car aimed right at me, directly at me. It was coming at me. We were both going about 60 miles an hour. We were going to crash. And I jammed on the brake. I turned the wheel to the left, and thank God there was an open field over there. And he jammed on the brake and turned the wheel to the right, and we were both still aimed at each other. And I kept turning the wheel, and he kept turning the wheel, and there was a fury of smoke. And then we stopped, and oh my gosh, I looked over. The truck had pulled over because he heard all this noise. People had come out, and there were kids in the car. And the guy hopped out of his car. I hopped out of my car, and we were both saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And then we hugged each other because we were still there. And that was the first time I really realized how impermanent life was. How in just that instant, things went from driving down the road to my life flashing in front of me. From moment to moment, life is different. At different times in our lives, we realize our impermanence. It's scary, isn't it? We don't want to realize our own impermanence. None of us want to focus on the fact that in this human experience, we are impermanent, but we are. And so how do we deal with that? What can we do? What are some tools we can use? Well, Pema and the Buddhists tell us that we can practice impermanence. We need to practice impermanence. All of us can understand impermanence with our intellect, but this is not yet true understanding. Our intellect alone will not lead us to freedom. It will not lead us to enlightenment. When we are solid and we concentrate, we can practice looking deeply, and we can look deeply and see the nature of impermanence, and we can then be concentrated on this deep insight. So when we stop and when we look deeply and we feel impermanence, when we know impermanence, when we accept impermanence, when we be impermanence, then we can grasp this deep insight. This is how the insight of impermanence becomes a part of our being. It becomes our daily experience. We have to maintain the insight of impermanence in order to be able to see and live impermanence all the time. If we can use impermanence as an object of our meditation, we will nourish the understanding of impermanence in such a way that it will live in us every day. With this practice, impermanence becomes a key that opens the door of reality. So some of the ways that we can practice this is just seeing emotions through the eyes of impermanence. When somebody says something that makes you angry and you wish they would go away, please look deeply with the eyes of impermanence. If he or she were gone, what would you really feel? Would you be happy or would you weep? Practicing this insight can be very helpful. There is a gatha or poem we can use to help us. Angry in the ultimate dimension, I close my eyes and look deeply. 300 years from now, where will you be and where shall I be? When we are angry, what do we usually do? We shout, we scream, and we try to blame someone else for our problems. Yeah, we shout, we scream, we try to blame you for our problems. But looking at anger with the eyes of impermanence, we can stop and breathe. Angry at each other in the ultimate dimension, we close our eyes and look deeply. We try to see 300 years into the future. What will you be like? What will I be like? Where will you be? Where will I be? We only need to breathe in and out, look at our future and at the other person's future. We don't need to look as far as 300 years. It could be 50 or 60 years from now when we have both passed away. Looking at the future, we see that the other person is very precious to us. When we know we can lose them at any moment, we're no longer angry. We want to embrace her or him and say, "How wonderful, you are still alive. I am so happy. How could I be angry with you? Both of us have to die someday. And while we are still alive and together, it is foolish to be angry at each other." Practice that. Practice. The reason we are foolish enough to make ourselves suffer and make the other person suffer is we forget that we and the other person are impermanent. Someday when we die, we will lose all our possessions, our power, our family, everything, our freedom. Peace and joy in the present moment is the most important thing we have. But without an awakened understanding of impermanence, it is not possible to be happy. Some people do not even want to look at a person when they are alive. But when they die, they write eloquent obituaries and make offerings of flowers. But at the point that the person has died and cannot smell the fragrance of the flowers anymore, if we really understood and remembered that life was impermanent, we would do everything we could to make the other person happy right here and right now. If we really understood and remembered that life was impermanent, we would do everything we could to make the other person happy right here and right now. If we spend 24 hours being angry at our beloved, it is because we are ignorant of impermanence. And then let us let impermanence nurture love. Because we are ignorant and forget about impermanence, we don't nurture our love properly. When we were first married or brought a significant other into our life, our love was great. We thought that if we did not have each other, we would not be able to live one more day. Because we did not know how to practice impermanence, after 1 or 2 years, our love changed to frustration and anger. Ever been there? Now we wonder how we can survive one more day if we have to remain with that person we once loved so much. We decide there is no alternative. We want a divorce. If we live with the understanding of impermanence, we will cultivate and nurture our love. And only then will it last. Only then will it last. You have to nourish and look after your love for it to grow. Impermanence. Shodan writes this in When Things Fall Apart. Maybe the most important teaching is to lighten up and relax. It's such a huge help in working with our crazy, mixed up minds to remember that what we're doing is unlocking a softness that is in us and letting it spread. Every act counts. Every thought and emotion counts too. This is all the path we have. The path that we're talking about is the moment by moment evolution of experience, the moment by moment evolution of the world of phenomena, the moment by moment evolution of our thoughts and our emotions. Every thought, every act counts. Let that softness that's in you come alive. Embrace our impermanence. Get to know it. Get to be it. Get to accept it. It's not going away. As you move through the day today, take each moment. Embrace it with softness and kindness. Embrace your own impermanence. Thanks for being here this week. Be impermanent. God bless.